Hi, I'm Yaakov Katz, and welcome to the Jewish People's Podcast by JPPI. Last year, during the holiday of Sukkot, a group of ultra-Orthodox men, some of them wearing their talit and carrying their lulav and etrog, were filmed spitting at Christian pilgrims carrying a large wooden cross through the old city of Jerusalem. The incident came a few months after a Jewish man had thrown a rock through a window in the room of the Last Supper. It came after a Maronite Christian center in northern Israel had been vandalized, and graves in the Christian cemetery on Mount Zion in Jerusalem were damaged. Hateful inscriptions had been sprayed on the walls of the Armenian monastery in Jerusalem's old city. There was an incident when an usher at the Western Wall Plaza at the Kotel asked the abbot of the Dermidan Abbey in Jerusalem to remove the large cross he wore over his black robe because it was, and I quote, really big and inappropriate for this Jewish place. And then there was a group of religious Jews led by an extreme rabbi, Tzvi Tau of the Har HaMor Yeshiva, as well as Jerusalem City Councilman Aryeh King, who assaulted, not physically, but verbally, a group of Christian pilgrims at the David Sid Center near the Kotel. There's no hiding the fact today that attacks by Jews against Christians and their holy sites are on the rise. Tourists are attacked, clergy are attacked, and historical Christian sites are desecrated and vandalized. And the only reason we really know about some of these incidents is because many of them are captured on video. Had there been no video evidence, the abuse suffered by shocked and insulted Christian tourists would likely have gone unaddressed. And we should care, because it doesn't take a great deal of imagination for us, the Jews, to think what would happen if the roles were reversed. What would happen if Christians were spitting at Jews in some European capital? Would Israelis and Jewish people just stand by and not care? Israeli politicians we know would swiftly denounce growing anti-Semitism in Europe. The Israeli Foreign Ministry would summon the European country's ambassador. The immigration minister would call for an emergency plan to encourage aliyah from that country, and on and on and on. But for some reason, when it happens in Israel against Christians, and the people assaulting or cursing or spitting are Jews, there's too often silence. Professor Michal Bar Asher Siegel, a senior fellow at JPPI, has done a deep dive into this very sad and disturbing reality over the last few months. Michal, together with two interns at the center and junior fellows, has crisscrossed the country and met with Christian leaders, clergy, professional staff. She's heard accounts that would shock us all. Some of them about the hurdles and obstacles that the government puts in their way for basic things like health insurance, renewing a visa, and others about the physical assaults, the spitting phenomenon that happens way too often all over the country. This cannot and should not be tolerated. You'll want to hear what Michal has to say. Have a listen. Michal, it's great to have you back on the JPPI podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So we're here because we're talking about something that is very interesting that you've done, I'd say, over the last few months, which is really do a deep dive into the religious Christian community inside Israel, primarily in the, let's say, Jerusalem area, but not just, and looking at how they're treated, how they feel, and what is their status? How does the government treat them? And also what has been happening to them? Because there have been so many reports over the last few years of discrimination and of abuse and of ultra-Orthodox Jews passing them on the street and spitting at them. But they always come and go, and they kind of floating out there, but never really taken too seriously. But you went really deep on this, and I think it's such an important topic. You presented to all of us at the Jewish People Policy Institute, and really the feedback was, wow, everyone there, and these are intelligent people, well knowledgeable people who were quite shocked by what you had presented them. So fill us in on what's going on.
So first, I'll give you the background to it. For my profession, I'm a professor of ancient Judaism. I do Jews and Christians in the first century CE. I'm a Talmud scholar. I look at the Babylonian Talmud and ask questions about interaction between two different religious communities, the Jews and the Christians, when the Christians came to be, At the same time, alongside Rabbinic Judaism, the formative years of Christianity and Judaism as we know them, the parting of the ways. But along the way, I teach, I study, I learn the texts that basically convey the interaction between those two religious communities, what did they say about each other, the polemics, the arguments, the coexistence, the fact that, how two religious communities that are, their leaders keep telling them that they're very different and they, they should stay apart. How in fact, in real life, there are many more interactions than we previously thought. This is an exciting field of topic, and this is really my forte. But I can't ignore the fact that I live in, the 21st century, and our life are deeply affected by the fact that two other religious communities are in conflict, right? We're talking about the Muslim and Jewish communities. And I would say it's true that there is a nationalist aspect to it and a political aspect, of course, to it, and the historical aspect to it, but there is also a theological aspect to it. So that drew me to that question. But because I deal with this in the past, I also ask about the question about the present. What do the interaction that those two religious communities can teach us about the religious communities themselves? In other words, when Judaism or Israel as a modern state decides to address or to come in contact with another religious community, what does it tell us about that group itself, right? So what does our treatment of the other, different from us theologically, say about us? That's my question. This is a very large question. Now, that question has a lot to do with racism, and it has to do with, I don't know, kindness of heart. It has to do with empathy. It has to do with ideology. It has to do with theology. It has to do with a lot of questions that were relevant then, 2,000 years ago, and they're relevant, very relevant now. The problem is, if we want to look at the Muslim-Jewish conflict happening in the land of Israel, in modern-day state of Israel, we get into a little bit of trouble looking into that. Let's say I want to say, how do Jews, interact with Muslim or mosques, or what's the ideology behind that and all that? That would be hard to do because of the bitroni, the security situation. Sorry, missing words in English. This would be a hard thing to check. If we take apart, the dangers, the military aspect of it, the security issues that are involved, and that's a hard one to deal, and especially now when everything is so, fueled and complicated. So I actually started to look at the other religious group here in Israel. We have a few religious groups in Israel, but the other relatively big group of religious group in Israel, which is the Christians in Israel. Again, my field of topic, but 2,000 years ahead. Now, the Christians in Israel are, I would say, about 1.9%, almost 2% of the population of the state of Israel, about 187,000 people. This is according to the Lamasa, the counts.
National Bureau of Statistics, yeah.
Oh, you're very helpful with your English today. And so when we're looking at the numbers of them, this is 2% is not a lot, but it's a significant amount of Christians in the land of Israel.
By the way, it's interesting, but I'm just sorry to interrupt, but 2% is what Jews are in America. So if America is often viewed as being the Christian country of the world, right? Although it's not, because there's separation of religion and state, but Christianity being the predominant religion in the United States, Jews make up a minority of just 2%. It's interesting how in the Jewish state, Christians make up 2%.
I did not know that. That's actually a really interesting number. But, this has decreased significantly. One of the people we've talked about the fact that 100 years ago, Christians were 50% of non-Jews in Jerusalem, and now they're down to that, the 2%. So the numbers are decreasing rapidly around this entire region, and not just Israel, but specifically in Israel. So what my methodology in doing this research was to look at that group, right? That group of people in the land of Israel, and ask, how does the state of Israel, as an official government policy, and the people on the ground, people who live side by side, Christian, the police, religious Jews, non-religious Jews, how do they treat the Christian living amongst them? And by this, ask the question, how do we treat the other within, right? So how do we treat the other religious community? Taking into consideration that the security aspect is less apparent when we look at the Christian community, even though the Christian community at some point after 67 took the sides of Palestinians, and there's all kinds of other aspects to it. But putting it very simplistically, I wanted to look at that, and honestly, the picture is kind of sad and
Right.
depressing, and so the way we did this research, and I'm looking at Jude Targan and Gila Amati, two other junior fellows at the institute that work with me, and together we looked first at the literature that led up to that, what was the official government position, and why did the state of Israel took measures in some ways or others. Then we actually went and talked to some leaders of the Christian community, has heard from them about the challenges that they face and how do they deal with them. And lastly, we talked with a few Jewish organizations who basically help the Christians.
Now, you found with the Christians, if I understand, two big issues. One is your government bureaucracy, right? The way they're treated, whether it has to do with property tax, whether it has to do with visa status for a lot of these people, religious officials and authority, they come in, and priests or nuns or whatever it might be, they come from outside the country and they come here for a period of time, and they don't have status and they have to keep on renewing their health insurance and whatever, about a lot of bureaucracy. And then the second category, it seemed to me, was the way they're treated by the average person on the street.
Yeah.
So give us, if you can, some examples in both categories.
So the first category, which is in a sense interesting, the state of Israel founded this, a government branch or government I don't know, side office that dealt with religious minorities in Israel, and that was dismantled at some point in the 2000s. And what happens now is that there's many government officials, one in the visa office and one in the tax office and blah, 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 that deals with them, and so they feel kind of lost, and everything is much harder to deal. And that's, meaning that took much lesser high priority in the scale of what do the state of Israel want to supply help with. That's kind of decreased in the importance.
Right.
We have to understand also that the way the Christians are treated here has a ramification for Christians around the world. So the church is looking at how Christians are treated in the Holy Land and holy sites, etc. And the position that the state of Israel takes has ramification to that. If you deny visa access to pilgrimage coming for holy sites, this is one of the issues, the major issues. The current government has really made it much, much harder to come and do pilgrimage to the holy site. So what does that mean? And what's the effect on that on the larger scale of Israel and Christians around the world? So that's one aspect. Second aspect is, so this is again, under what you called bureaucracy. It's also the fact that this is not something that people care about. And here we go to the second one, and I'm talking about the police specifically. If they have issues, if they have things that bother them, and they turn to the police, the attitude they get is of, I don't know, carelessness, kind of like apathy.
They don't care, apathy to some extent.
Apathy,
Right.
yeah.
But I mean, but
And
what I
that
want to try to
goes
understand,
but it
yeah.
goes hand in hand, I think, with the general atmosphere of, kind of putting that position aside, even though it has ramification politically that, someone, should think about. And we have to also say there's you kind of hinted at it, there's a whole aspect of land, the Christian church of its very, by the way, we say Christian church, but we also to say there's different groups of Christians. There's the Catholic and Protestants, and the Iranian, there's all kinds of different Armenian church, there's different kinds of group of Christians in Jerusalem and in Israel as at large. But in general, they also have land that was bought here in the 19th centuries and in the beginning of the 20th century. And that poses a whole slew of other questions of tax and etc. So we'll put that aside because that's a whole issue.
But
and then
where does it, hold on, before we dive into specific examples, and I want you to give us some, but like, where does it come from, do you think? I mean, because, obviously there's a religious element, and maybe give us a few words, if you can, also about the famous Meiri, who was a Jewish scholar who gave that who gave permission for Jews to enter into churches. But even before the practical aspect of it, do you think is it religious? Is it politics? Is it just that we have a right wing extreme government right now, and maybe it would have been different with a different government? Or is it just always going to be like this because of a deep-seated hostility towards the Christians because of what they did to us, the Vatican did to us back in 1930s, 1940s Europe?
I think the answer is yes. To all of
Everything.
that, to all of that. We can't ignore, and this is why when you kind of separate between the bureaucracy and the people itself and how they treat Christian, I don't think they're that separate. And I think it has a lot to do with, yes, the history of it. I always say that as an example, in all of the universities in Israel, you always have a Jewish studies department and you have an Islamic studies department. You don't have a single Christian studies department in the entire state of Israel.
Which is remarkable.
There's
remarkable
religious
thinking.
studies or whatever.
Do we know how many churches there are in this country?
In Israel?
Yeah.
A lot. There's they
hundreds, I would assume.
Yeah. But it's not even about that. This is like if you should study this in terms of archaeology, in terms of history, in terms of sites and the ancient Christianity, there's no there's no more sensible place to do this than in the center of Israel. But the decision not to do it was a conscious decision. Christianity had a very dark past with the Jews through the centuries and ending with the Holocaust, etc. This is not an issue that to be belittled, and we have a very long history with Christianity, and that was, I think, a lot of the reason for that. But again, there's a lot of political ramification of treating, once you become the sovereign of this country and you now are responsible of holy sites of the Christian faith, there is a responsibility side. And the governments of Israel from its beginning, from its inception, knew that. They understood that there were agreement that they were done with the Vatican and other, church officials around the world. There was awareness of how important this is. But alongside that, there was always the sense that Christianity is the big enemy. And that comes from my sources. This goes way back to, polemics, Jews versus Christian and Christian versus Jews. And that goes, way back. But what's the weight you give to that versus political situation versus the fact that now you are the sovereign and you're no longer a Jew, needing their protection, but you are the one who's responsible for their safety, right? So, but the weight you give to how much you defend it and how important it is to you to keep freedom of religion in this country, to allow other religion to worship their faith, to use their holy places. How important is that to you as a state? And this is where the change has been, it's always been problematic, but in recent years, and this has a lot to do with the current government,
it's gotten worse.
And the place of the rabbis. And this is where we get to the second part. And all the Christians we were talking to and the Jewish organization were talking about a terrific, a really big increase in spitting, in violence, in trashing, actually damaging Christian, restaurants and places and hitting people and coming. And so we talked to Iska Harani, who has a whole this network of guides, tour guides who come and help protect Christians when they do their parades on their holy days and protect them from Orthodox Jews that come and spit on them. Spitting.
Sorry to interrupt, Michal. Explain to us the spitting. What is that?
Spitting is actually found in rabbinic sources. There is an obligation, according to rabbinic sources, to mock and spit and belittle sites of other religion. And that the original intent was Greco-Roman religions, but then it transformed into Christian's religion. That's there. But I have to tell you, I don't think it was actually practiced ever, because if Jews, dare to do anything like that, they would have been punished, and severely so. But you should aim to do that, meaning mock other religion. This is there. But there's a lot of stuff in rabbinic sources. This was written 2,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago. You pick and choose what you choose. And taking that one and making this something you actually do. This happened to me. I was telling you before that I was walking with a group of and I got lost in the old city, and I was looking for a specific entrance to do to one of the churches. And I asked the Jew that was standing next to me, and he spit on my shoes next to me because I was walking with a Christian group. And I thought to myself, what brings a person to a situation where he stands in front of another human being and able to spit I know it's in the sources, and there's a lot of other.
It's delusional to me. It's disturbing.
It's more than delusional. What it does to us as people, that the making it, making our soul so apathic to the person standing in front of us. It's meant to degrade, and you're doing it. You're degrading it, and we've stood there. We have all those pictures from the Holocaust of degrading Jews, and taking off their beards and spitting at them and yelling at them, and we're doing it to another human being. This for me is. It's and saying it's in the sources, yeah, but they're also in the sources that we can kill a son that he drinks too much and eats too much. It's also in the Bible, and you can take your wife to the priest if you suspect that she's cheating on you, and all this stuff is there, sure, but this is what you choose to actually enact in modern day state of Israel is one thing. By the way, this is illegal. You're not supposed to do that to a different person,
No,
and
it's
this is where
assault, but also, I mean, and part of the problem is that these cases do happen, but that the percentage of those perpetrators who are either arrested or charges are filed is non-existent, negligible.
non-existent. The truth is, so this network that these Kaharani can have, they file complaints to the police, and the police closes all the files. No one cares. And not only that, we have film of the police standing by and watching Orthodox Jews attack Christians with their Christian garbs and everything, and do nothing. So this is something that is so disturbing, because again, and here I get to my, don't forget my original academic question: what does it say about us as a country? How do we treat the other group within us? And again, coming from a long history of how we were treated as a religious minority, how do we choose to treat another religious minority?
Well, I mean, yeah, I do have to say that I just also, in my mind, I keep on imagining if the roles were reversed, if the Jews were walking to a synagogue in Budapest or London or Paris, and they were spit at by a group of non-Jews. I mean, we here in Israel would be summoning the ambassador from France or Hungary and condemning and issuing a démarche and everything. How come you're not protecting Jews? It would be anti-Semitism galore. But here we're allowing this to happen here against a minority.
And again,
is obscene.
There's tons of evidence and pictures and videos. It's all documented. We looked at the documents. There's list and list of documented cases, and no one cares. The state of Israel, in fact, does everything in its power to support people who want to, chase them away, make them feel uncomfortable. And this is honestly nauseating. I feel ashamed and embarrassed to be part of this state of Israel, this current picture, this current situation on the state of Israel. And we can't ignore, and here I go back, we can't ignore that this is not just for the Christian, this is in general, right? This is how the state of Israel decides in this right-wing government specifically to blatantly be racist, blatantly do not allow freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and this goes hand in hand. And honestly, it makes me feel very, very ashamed.
So you're doing this and you're looking into this, and the purpose is to what? We want to try you. Where do you want to see this lead to?
I want awareness. I want everyone, no matter their political view, to look at it and say, wait, this is wrong. No matter who the sides are, I don't care which religions is it. We all have to come together and say, this shouldn't happen under our roof. This cannot be the case that this is what the state of Israel allows to happen. It cannot be that this is the side that the police takes. This is not okay. Let's start with that. I want to bring this to much more awareness. This is a few good people that help them. And I've decided to, research this properly, prompted this, and again, bring it to the public awareness. I want to, go to the media, and I want to go to prominent people. And I'm doubtful I'll find a lot of cooperation in this current government, but I really want to try. And I want to get to the president and the state of Israel, and I want to yell from the, top of my lungs. This is not okay. This is not okay. We are in 2024. We have the power to be a sovereign state of Israel, and we have to allow the freedom of religion to religious minorities in this country.
So obviously the responsibility comes with being the sovereign ruler of Israel. Just give us, if you can, before I let you go, there are some organizations that you mentioned that are doing some great work. One of them is, for example, is called Tag Meir. Right, so which is a play on the term Tag Mechir. Tag Mechir is like price tag. is often the term that's used for retaliatory settler or right-wing attacks against Palestinians after a terrorist attack against Jews in the West Bank. So it's called Tag Mahal.
Not just towards Islamic sites, but also they actually torch and put graffiti
vandalize,
vandalize monasteries and churches. So this is specifically also targeted towards side roads that have cross on them to show where the monasteries are being defaced. And so they go the day after and they show that we are Tag Meir, we show the light and not the darkness of this retaliation.
Exactly.
This is Tag,
so that's one. So tell us about some of these organizations.
So this is Tag Meir. This is run by Gadi Gvaryahu. He is the CEO of this wonderful organization that really goes, for example, the day before, the hours before the march on Independence Day through the Old City on the Jerusalem Day. They walk before that. This is a march that typically vandalize stores in the old cities and treat people wrongly. So they go and they give flowers to the people and ask for their forgiveness of what's about to happen. So wonderful, beautiful organization. Second is by Iska Harani that I mentioned before. She is the CEO of Chalon Lehar Zion, a window to the Mount Zion. And that's a network, again, of mostly tour guides in Jerusalem that come together. They wear those, bright yellow vests and help them, help mostly the Armenian church when they on their festive days when they march in the old city. So they defend them and they do all kinds of activities to help them, and mostly help them by filing reports to the police that, again, the police ignores, but at least there is if you don't file the report, you can't complain that anyone is ignoring you. But so they file the complaints, which then get ignored, but at least the information is being collected and there's a record of those activities happening. So there's a few good people trying to do good things.
At least that. At least there's some good people out there. Well,
and I hope your listeners will understand that this is an issue that is really part or parcel of who we are as a nation. And we cannot be those who support the degradation, the vandalism, the hurt of religious minorities. This should be an issue that we all care about.
Yeah. We need leadership in government. We need religious leadership. We need leadership in general.
I agree.
Especially in this country.
I agree.
All right. Okay, Michal, thank you so much for really showcasing and highlighting this really super important issue. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Yaakov.